The beginning. My name is Emma. I'm 28 years old, living alone in a small apartment in the heart of the city. My life is a routine of endless workdays and fleeting weekends. I work as an analyst at a demanding firm, which means long hours and constant stress. It's a job that leaves me with little time for anything else. I come home exhausted, too tired to do much more than collapse onto my bed. It started gradually. At first, I would wake up in the middle of the night feeling a heavy weight on my chest. I couldn't move or scream, my body paralyzed, my mind awake and frantic. It was terrifying, but I chalked it up to stress and exhaustion. I read somewhere that sleep paralysis is common, especially among people who don't get enough rest, so I didn't think much of it. But then, the shadows started appearing. The shadow people. The first time I saw them, it was during one of those paralyzed nights. I woke up to the familiar feeling of pressure on my chest. I struggled to move, to breathe, but it was useless. I was trapped in my own body. My eyes darted around the room, trying to make sense of the darkness. And that's when I saw them. They were standing in the corners of my bedroom, tall and thin, their forms barely discernible from the shadows that filled the room. Their presence was menacing, a tangible fear that gripped my heart and made my blood run cold. They didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stood there watching me. I wanted to scream, to cry for help, but I couldn't. When I finally broke free from the paralysis, I bolted upright in bed, gasping for air. The shadows were gone, leaving only the memory of their piercing gaze. I told myself it was just a nightmare, a figment of my exhausted mind, but deep down, I knew it was something more. Escalation. The nights grew worse. The shadow people appeared more frequently, and their presence became more oppressive. They seemed to be getting closer each time, edging nearer to my bed. I started dreading sleep, afraid of what awaited me in the dark. I tried everything to avoid the paralysis, keeping a regular sleep schedule, reducing caffeine, even meditation. But nothing worked. The shadows persisted. One particularly bad night, I awoke to the feeling of icy fingers gripping my ankles. My eyes flew open, and I saw them, closer than ever before. Their faceless heads loomed over me, their bodies stretching and contorting in unnatural ways. I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped inside my throat. I could only lie there, paralyzed, as they drew nearer. When I finally regained control of my body, I sat up, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still there, hiding just out of sight. The apartment that had once been my sanctuary now felt like a prison, the walls closing in around me. The Hat Man. The first time I saw him, I was in the grip of another bout of sleep paralysis. It was a particularly stressful week at work, and I had barely slept in days. I collapsed into bed, hoping for a few hours of respite, but instead, I found myself trapped in that familiar state of helplessness. The shadows were there, as always, but this time, there was someone else with them. He stood at the foot of my bed, a tall figure dressed in a long dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face into shadow. Unlike the others, he exuded a sense of intelligence, a malevolent awareness that made my skin crawl. He didn't move, just stood there, watching me with an intensity that felt almost tangible. I could feel his eyes on me, even though I couldn't see them. The air in the room grew colder, and I felt a deep primal fear settle in my bones. When I finally managed to break free, I bolted upright, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of him. But he was gone, leaving only the lingering sense of dread. descent into madness. The encounters with the Hat Man became more frequent. He appeared almost every night, his presence growing more oppressive with each visit. The shadow people seemed to defer to him, standing back as he loomed over me. I felt like I was losing my mind, the line between reality and nightmare blurring more with each passing day. I started avoiding sleep, staying up as long as I could, but it only made things worse. The exhaustion made the paralysis more intense, the hallucinations more vivid. I could see the Hat Man even when I was awake, his shadow lurking in the corners of my vision. I was living in a constant state of fear, jumping at every sound, every flicker of movement. I tried to talk to friends about it, but they dismissed it as stress or an overactive imagination. I even saw a doctor who prescribed sleeping pills and suggested therapy, but nothing helped. The Hat Man was always there, waiting for me in the dark. Confrontation. One night, after a particularly grueling day at work, I collapsed into bed, too exhausted to care about the nightmares that awaited me. I fell into a deep sleep almost immediately, but it wasn't long before I was jolted awake by the familiar feeling of paralysis. The Hat Man was there, standing closer than ever before. His presence was suffocating, the air thick with malice. This time he moved. Slowly, he reached out a gloved hand and placed it on my chest. The touch was cold, sending a shock of fear through my body. I could feel his fingers pressing down, as if trying to crush the life out of me. I fought against the paralysis with everything I had, my mind screaming for my body to move. And then, for the first time, I heard his voice. It was a low, guttural whisper, speaking words I couldn't understand. The sound filled me with a terror unlike anything I'd ever felt before. With a final, desperate effort, I broke free from the paralysis and scrambled out of bed. The Hat Man vanished, but the fear remained, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. I couldn't keep living like this. I had to find a way to stop him. Seeking help. Desperation drove me to seek help from unconventional sources. I spent hours scouring the internet for information on sleep paralysis and shadow people. I found countless stories from others who had experienced similar things, but no real answers. It was a small comfort to know I wasn't alone, but it didn't solve my problem. I reached out to a paranormal investigator, a woman named Dr. Sarah Evans. She was skeptical at first, but after hearing my story, she agreed to help. She came to my apartment, bringing with her an array of equipment and a calm, reassuring presence that eased my fears. Dr. Evans conducted a thorough investigation, setting up cameras and recording devices in my bedroom. She stayed with me through the night, observing and taking notes. I felt a strange sense of hope, as if maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to escape this nightmare. The final encounter. The night Dr. Evans stayed over was the worst one yet. I fell asleep with her sitting in a chair beside my bed, her presence a small comfort. But it wasn't enough to keep the Hat Man at bay. I woke up in the grip of sleep paralysis, the familiar pressure on my chest. The Hat Man was there, closer than ever before. His face was still hidden in shadow, but I could feel his eyes boring into me. He reached out, his gloved hand hovering inches above my face. Dr. Evans was watching, her eyes wide with shock, as she witnessed the invisible force pinning me down. She started chanting something, a string of words I couldn't understand. The Hat Man turned his head towards her, and for a moment, I thought he might attack her. But then something strange happened. The air in the room seemed to shimmer, and the Hat Man recoiled, as if struck by an invisible force. His form wavered, and for a brief moment I saw his face. It was pale, almost skeletal, with eyes that burned with an otherworldly light. With a final guttural scream, he vanished, leaving the room in an eerie silence. The pressure lifted from my chest, and I could move again. I sat up, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face. Dr. Evans rushed to my side, her expression a mix of relief and concern. "He's gone," she said softly. "At least for now." The aftermath. The nights after that were mercifully free of the Hat Man and his shadowy minions. I could sleep again, though it took time for the fear to fade. Dr. Evans continued to help me, providing support and guidance as I worked to rebuild my life. I learned to manage my stress better, to take care of myself in ways I hadn't before. The experience left its mark on me, a lingering wariness of the dark and the things that might lurk within it. But I was stronger now, more aware of the forces that can prey on a tired mind. A new beginning. Life slowly returned to normal. I still worked hard, but I made time for rest and relaxation, for the things that brought me joy. I moved to a new apartment, hoping a change of scenery would help me put the past behind me. Every now and then, I would think about the Hat Man, about the terror I had lived through. It felt like a bad dream, a distant memory that faded with each passing day. But I never forgot the lesson I had learned, that there are things in this world beyond our understanding, things that can reach out from the shadows and touch our lives in ways we can't always explain. And so, I moved forward, carrying the scars of my ordeal, but also the strength it had given me. I was no longer just a girl living alone in an apartment, stressed and afraid. I was a survivor, a fighter, and I knew that no matter what nightmares came my way, I had the power to face them. Sleep paralysis is very unpleasant to experience, especially if you don't know what's going on. Let us know in the comments section if you have experienced sleep paralysis. Sweet dreams, and watch out for shadows.